When the Library of Alexandria faded from history, it did not mark the end of human knowledge. It marked the end of a particular way of organizing it. For centuries, Alexandria had represented an ideal. The belief that learning from many cultures could be gathered, preserved, and studied in one place. When that institution ceased to function, not through a single catastrophe, but through gradual political and economic decline, the ancient Mediterranean world lost its most ambitious center of scholarship. Yet knowledge did not disappear. It moved. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented, the Eastern Mediterranean, Mesopotamia, and Persia remained connected by trade, administration, and learning. These regions would soon form the foundation of a new intellectual center, one that would rival Alexandria in scope and surpass it in longevity. That center emerged in the 8th century, under the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate. In the year 762, the Abbasid ruler al-Mansur founded the city of Baghdad on the banks of the Tigris River. The location was chosen carefully. Baghdad sat near major trade routes linking the Mediterranean world with Persia, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. It was close enough to older centers of learning to draw on their traditions, yet new enough to be shaped deliberately. From the beginning, Baghdad was designed not only as a political capital, but as an administrative and cultural one. The Abbasids inherited territories once governed by the Byzantine and Sasanian empires, both of which relied on educated bureaucracies, written law, astronomy, mathematics, and medicine to function. To govern effectively, the Abbasids needed access to accumulated knowledge. This practical need became the foundation of a larger intellectual project. By the late 8th and early 9th centuries, Abbasid rulers began systematically supporting the collection and translation of scholarly texts from earlier civilizations. Greek philosophy and science, Persian administrative knowledge, and Indian mathematics were all viewed as valuable, regardless of religious or cultural origin. Out of this effort grew into an institution later known as the House of Wisdom, or Bait al-Hikmah. The House of Wisdom was not a university in the modern sense, nor was it a single building with a fixed structure. Early references suggest it began as a royal library attached to the Abbasid court, gradually expanding into a broader center for translation, scholarship, and research. Its most active period occurred during the reign of the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun in the early 9th century. Al-Ma'mun actively sponsored learning. He funded the acquisition of books from across the known world, including texts obtained from Byzantine territories. These works arrived in Baghdad in Greek, Syriac, Persian, and Sanskrit, and were translated into Arabic by teams of scholars. Translation at the House of Wisdom was not mechanical copying. It was an intellectual process. Translators compared manuscripts, debated terminology, corrected errors, and discussed meaning. Many were multilingual scholars trained in medicine, philosophy, or mathematics, not scribes working blindly. One of the most important figures associated with this movement was Hunayn ibn Ishaq, a Christian physician fluent in Greek, Syriac, and Arabic. His translations of medical works by Hippocrates and Galen became standard references throughout the Islamic world and later medieval Europe. Hunayn and his students established rigorous standards for translation, emphasizing clarity and accuracy rather than literal word-for-word rendering. The translation movement extended beyond Greek texts. Persian works on astronomy and administration were incorporated, reflecting the Abbasids' inheritance of Sasanian statecraft. Indian mathematical texts introduced new numerical concepts, including the positional decimal system, which would later transform mathematics. As these works were translated and studied, Arabic became the dominant scholarly language across a vast region stretching from Iberia to Central Asia. This common language allowed ideas to circulate more easily than they had in the fragmented classical world. But the significance of the House of Wisdom lies not only in preservation. The scholars working in Baghdad did not treat ancient authorities as infallible. They tested ideas against observation and reason. Greek astronomical models were revised based on new measurements. Mathematical concepts were expanded into new fields, including algebra, which emerged as a distinct discipline. One of the most influential mathematicians of this period was Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. His work synthesized Greek and Indian mathematics into systematic treatises that introduced algebraic methods and standardized calculation techniques. His name would later give rise to the word algorithm. Medicine advanced through clinical observation. Physicians such as al-Razi emphasized diagnosis based on symptoms rather than abstract theory. Hospitals in Baghdad functioned as teaching institutions, where students learned through supervised practice. Medical texts produced during this period remained authoritative for centuries. The introduction of paper, transmitted from China through Central Asia, played a crucial role in this intellectual expansion. Compared to parchment, paper was cheaper and easier to produce. Books became more accessible, libraries expanded, and literacy increased among educated classes. By the 10th century, Baghdad was widely regarded as the most important intellectual center in the world. Scholars traveled there to study, debate, and teach. Knowledge flowed outward along trade routes, influencing centers of learning in Cairo, Damascus, Cordoba, and beyond. This did not mean that learning elsewhere disappeared. Byzantium, India, and China maintained their own scholarly traditions. But the scale, organization, and institutional support found in Baghdad were exceptional. Over time, however, the conditions that sustained this system weakened. Political unity within the Abbasid Caliphate fractured. Regional dynasties asserted independence. Economic pressures reduced state patronage of scholarship. Intellectual life continued, but it became more decentralized. The House of Wisdom did not vanish suddenly. Its influence declined gradually as resources and stability diminished. Then, in the mid-13th century, a force from beyond the Islamic world reshaped Eurasia. Mongol armies, highly mobile and strategically flexible, swept across Central Asia and Persia. City after city fell. In 1258, a Mongol force led by Hulagu Khan reached Baghdad. The Abbasid leadership attempted negotiations, but internal divisions and strategic miscalculations weakened the city's defenses. After a brief siege, Baghdad fell. The sack of Baghdad was catastrophic. Contemporary sources describe widespread destruction, loss of life, and the collapse of administrative and cultural institutions. Libraries were damaged or destroyed, and countless manuscripts were lost. Later historical accounts describe books being thrown into the Tigris River, darkening the water with ink. Modern historians treat these descriptions cautiously, recognizing them as symbolic rather than literal. What is not disputed is that an enormous quantity of written material disappeared, and with it the institutional continuity that had supported centuries of scholarship. The Abbasid Caliphate in Baghdad effectively ended. Although centers of learning continued elsewhere in the Islamic world, Baghdad never regained its former role as the heart of global scholarship. The loss was not total. Many texts had already been transmitted westward through Al-Andalus and Sicily, where they were translated into Latin. These works would later contribute to the intellectual revival of medieval Europe. But something essential was broken. The House of Wisdom had demonstrated that knowledge could be gathered across cultures, preserved systematically, and expanded through reasoned inquiry. Its decline showed how dependent such achievements are on political stability, patronage, and institutional support. The story of the House of Wisdom challenges simplistic narratives of history. It shows that progress is not inevitable, and that civilizations do not lose knowledge because they become incapable of learning, but because the systems that protect learning collapse. Just as Alexandria had faded centuries earlier, Baghdad followed, not because curiosity vanished, but because the structures that sustained it did. The House of Wisdom no longer exists as a building. What remains is its legacy, the preservation of ancient knowledge, the development of new disciplines, and the reminder that learning flourishes only when societies choose to protect it. Alexandria fell. Baghdad fell. The question history leaves us with is not why knowledge was lost, but how often humanity must relearn the cost of failing to preserve it.